The Titans play football on Saturday. We're going to preview the Titans 49ers preseason week 1 game. And when I say preview, it's a preseason game, so we're not really previewing it. We're going to talk about players that we're excited to watch based on training camp reports, whose stock is up, whose stock is down, who needs to impress in this preseason game, and which players has Brian Callahan already said will not play. We're going to get into all of that now. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. We are back. I'm Justin Graver. With me as always, Justin Melo, returning from our long absence. Yes, we had an emergency pod. Some people in the comments pointed out that we were wearing the same clothes that we were wearing when we were recording the pods while I was gone. So was that pre-recorded? Nobody will ever know. Or did we instantly react? No one will ever know what the how this
We
stuff
got
works.
some real Sherlock Holmes in the comments, eh? Someone was like, wait a minute, this Quandre Diggs reaction, you're wearing the same clothes you were wearing. Was it the stock up, stock down, or busting mitts? I don't remember, but kudos to that guy. For all I can say, you'll never know, but Graver and I were very well prepared for the possibility of Quandre Diggs signing with the Titans.
When there's a lot of smoke and you're going on vacation for 2 weeks, you got to be prepared for every scenario, right? So that's, this is our first official podcast back 2 weeks plus into training camp. I feel like we missed a ton of stuff. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get a chance to cover, and we're not just going to go back to 2 weeks ago and cover things. So we're going to move forward. We appreciate everyone for tuning in and returning to the channel. I'm sure you got your content from somewhere else while we were gone, and so thanks to those people as well. But let's get into this stuff now, Justin.
No, hold on. All of that stuff that you want to talk about, it sounds important. But I want to get to the bottom of what the people really came to this episode for. Did her family give you the blessing while you were on vacation in Switzerland?
First, let me just show off my Italian and how much better it got since the time we recorded. This is how I asked it. Voglio sposare tua figlia con il tuo permesso?
Oh my God, that rolled off the tongue. That was quick. It was articulate. You sound like a real accurate Italian. You're rolling your R's. I'm really impressed with that delivery. Way better than it was before. You want to talk about guys that are improving throughout training camp? Justin Graver has improved his Italian throughout training camp because that was a 10 out of 10.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so I learned a lot of Italian, actually. I mean, naturally, I'm surrounded by people who speak mostly Italian with very, little English that they are trying very hard because we're all trying to communicate. But my girlfriend was great at translating back and forth. But by the end of the 2-week trip, she didn't really need to translate anymore. I don't know how to say everything, but I was starting to understand the gist of basically what they were saying. So
because it's not even like it's a language where you're like, oh, that word does kind of sound like it is in English. You probably speak more Italian than my Italian girlfriend, I have a feeling, because she speaks a little, she understands, but she doesn't speak much. So that's wow.
But to answer your big question, yes, I received the blessing from my girlfriend's father. He was very excited. He was laughing at the idea that I even had to ask him. And I was like, hey, it's tradition and where I'm from, I grew up always thinking I would ask my future wife's father for his daughter's hand in marriage. So it's not like I'm like, oh, is this dowry good enough to marry your daughter like the olden days?
Yeah.
But just a little tradition there.
If you would have brought 3 pizzas, they're Italian, and a bag of spaghetti, that probably would have paid the dowry. That would have
not like a goat and a cow or something.
I don't know why your story just reminded me, but I'll never forget. I got a bit of a twisted sense of humor. One of my best friends, he's one of the greatest people in the world. I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. He's just such a nice person. He's a dentist. We're at his bachelor party dinner. Very tame because he's such a nice guy. Such a laid-back dude, very tame. We're at his bachelor party. I'm meeting, of course, his future wife's brothers for the first time. And we're talking at the dinner table, and I got a twisted sense of humor. So I just asked him flat out. I'm like, I'm going to use his name. I'm like, do you guys approve of your sister marrying Joe? What do you think about him? And they're like, oh, my God, he's such a great guy. Our whole family loves him. And again, I've never met these guys before. And out of nowhere, I'm like, you know what? He really is a good guy. Ever since he got out of prison, he's been on the straight and narrow. I just dropped that. He's never been to prison. He's never been arrested ever a day in his life. I just tried casually dropping that to just mess up his whole thing. But I'm glad the father-in-law approved of you and gave you the blessing.
I am too. It was quite a fun trip. We got to see a lot of stuff. One day we just took a boat from Switzerland down to Italy for lunch because that's like something you can do there.
It's close, yeah.
It's amazing. So yeah, great trip. Got the blessing I needed. We can move on to Titans training camp and Titans preseason week 1 game. Kicks off on Saturday against the San Francisco 49ers. And before we get into that, let's remind everyone this podcast is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. We'll talk more about Sinkers Beverages in a bit, so stay tuned for that. And let me also remind everyone to please subscribe to the YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, like, and turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. And plus, we really love it when you guys comment. Anything you can think of, comment. What are you excited for in this preseason game? What did you think about my Italian? Anything you want to comment, drop a comment below. Helps the video show up in other people's feeds and helps the channel grow. So we appreciate all your support. But Justin, I think we should start with looking ahead to this preseason game. I kind of want to, the way we talk about this game and what we're excited to watch, I want to kind of frame it in a stock up, stock down sort of way from training camp. So we're like, which players are we excited to watch? Which players need to do well is based on how they're performing so far in training camp. Brian Callahan has said the starters will play 1 or 2 series. So that's great. We didn't see a lot of that, if ever, under Mike Vrabel. I remember that Marcus Mariota led a great touchdown drive and threw a no-look pass against the Patriots a few years back, and then Ryan Tannehill came in and played really, really well. I think that was the 2019 season. I think that was the last time we saw starters play under Mike Vrabel in the preseason. So excited to see the first-team offense get out there, the Will Levis, Calvin Ridley connection, all that. I'm excited to see it. There are a handful of players who won't play. Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, probably the marquee names on that list. There were 4 guys, so the other 2 guys are kind of like special teams nobodies, so don't even remember who they were, to be honest. I could look it
Nick
up.
Vannett, the tight end, was one of them, right. And I don't want to spend more time than we should on Nick Vannett, but I did find that decision a little strange because he missed Thursday's practice with what Brian Callahan said was a rest day for him. Nick Vannett, I just don't get this decision because by no means should Nick Vannett be locked into like the tight end 3 role, right? Like they've got Thomas Udokoya, who's a stock up guy, by the way. He's been really good at training camp, making explosive plays in the passing game, lowering the shoulder in the open field, delivering some pops on the sideline. Like, why is Nick Vannett not playing? Again, that's all I'm going to say about it because he doesn't deserve a lot of time, but that's a really weird one to me considering it's a rest day. I've got some other questions. Okay, Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, I've got no questions. I understand it. Jamal Adams, Cheeto Awuzie. I imagine Cheeto's not going to play. He's still nursing the injury. I'd be stunned if he plays. We know DeAndre Hopkins is not going to play. We missed that news while you were gone 4 to 6 weeks with a knee injury. But Jamal Adams is a big one. They said he's been dealing with soreness. I bet he doesn't play. So, yes, he said the starters are going to play, but there are some questions there. Like I said, again, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs probably hasn't had enough padded practices, in my opinion, to play. No, I'd be stunned if he plays. Awuzie, again, I'm not expecting. Caleb Farley's not going to play. He's week to week with a hamstring. Leroy Watson, second or third string offensive tackle, is not going to play. He's got a knee injury as well. The Farley news is super disappointing, by the way. Maybe we'll get into that at some point. But he did say that a lot of people are going to play, and he only ruled out those handful of names. But I got a bunch of questions on some of those other guys who I don't expect to play.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that makes sense, especially about Jamal Adams, who's been just like dealing with soreness, whatever that means. Obviously, Caleb Farley's got a hamstring. He's not going to play if you've been following the reports.
Evergreen news.
Bummer for him because he was playing pretty well. I mean, if we recorded this 5 days ago, he would have been in stock up because he's been doing really well in the one-on-one reps. He hasn't got a lot of, team defense reps, according to those reports, but has played well when he had those chances. But the health stuff, your best ability is availability, and he just isn't available. So that's a bummer for him. Definitely a stock down now. He went from stock up to he's on a roller coaster, stock up, stock down. But let's get into the more top level things, the things I'm really excited for. Number 1, Will Levis. I mean, how could we go any other direction here other than the Titans' second-year signal caller? First year as the full-time starter in a new offense that is tailored to the passing game. He has been lighting it up by all accounts at practices, leading long touchdown drives, hitting deep passes, hitting short passes that get lots of run after catch. A Tyler Boyd long touchdown catch. There's been a lot of positive reports. He's thrown a handful of interceptions, That's to be expected. The most recent one, I believe, was like deflected off Nick Westbrook-Akine's hands and diving interception made by a defender. So not necessarily his fault. Maybe it was reportedly into a tight window, but overall, Levis has been balling out. I'm expecting to see big things. And in particular, the Will Levis-Calvin Ridley connection is reportedly getting better and better every single day. Saw a few days ago, Levis overthrowing a deep ball to Ridley, the timing not quite there, Levis not quite having a full grasp on Ridley's speed. Ridley did say, I like when he just throws it out there because it gives me a chance to use my speed and run under it, but occasionally Will Levis a bit too strong. And then more recently in like Wednesday's practice, Thursday's practice, Levis, Ridley have been connecting. Ridley made an amazing sideline catch with Trey Avery draped all over him, scored another long touchdown from Will Levis. It's just been a lot of positive, and it seems like the positives are getting better every day. So with only one or two series in a preseason game, I'm interested to see if, how much work they even get together, how many targets Calvin Ridley will even have in this limited opportunity. But the ideal thing would be they come out, they lead a touchdown drive, and then they sit back and rest for the rest of the game.
I'm a little surprised Ridley's playing in this game. So we believe. I mean, I'm thrilled. I'm excited to see him, but I'm a little surprised. He's come up limping, banged up at a couple practices. He's got a bit of a history. He's a proven guy. I'm surprised. But Brian Callahan a couple of days ago, he was pretty candid, by the way, when he said he wasn't thrilled with how that connection was at this point in camp, right? He flat out said that the timing was off, yada, yada. That's probably going into his line of thinking, right? Why they're both playing, saying, hey, we got to get this timing down for the regular season because he's going to be our number one receiver, certainly to start the year with Hopkins being out 4 to 6 weeks. And I think Hopkins is going to play in week 1, but, maybe he's on a limited snap count or maybe they're kind of working him back into the mix of things. I think Ridley's going to be the full go number 1. So it makes sense. You want to make sure you sort of done your job to ramp up preparation for that. But I'm a little surprised, but I'm so excited because I think Calvin Ridley's going to be a dynamic receiver in this offense. He's going to be outstanding, 1,000 yards, lead the team in multiple categories. Certainly, I think the Will Levis-Calvin Ridley connection, it's cheesy, it's easy, but it is number 1 on my list of things I'm excited to see.
Absolutely. And that's probably a big stock up, especially the last couple days. So as we're framing it in that conversation, huge stock up there. And relatedly, I mean, Calvin Ridley, important piece of this offense, regardless of what else happened or happens. But even more important with the news that we missed, that we didn't get to cover, that we can touch on briefly here, which is that DeAndre Hopkins suffered a knee injury and will miss 4 to 6 weeks as of a week ago. So we're in a 3 to 5 week range now. First, can I just say before we talk about the injury, really excited that Brian Callahan gives us information. He doesn't just say, oh, he's dealing with something and I don't want to put a timetable on it because everybody's different and it's not fair to the player to like have an expectation for when they might come back. No, fuck all that bullshit, Mike Vrabel. I don't want to hear about that shit. Like, just tell me a range. And if your range ends up being too short and we have to wait another week or two, then so be it. It's not putting pressure on the player. It's like, just give us an expectation as a fan base. We want to know what's going on with the team because we follow it very closely. And I love that Brian Callahan is just pretty open with information. We don't know if we can always trust everything he says yet. Like, that's something we'll learn through time. But I have, my instinct right now is to trust what he's saying. So anyway, DeAndre Hopkins, it was reported he will not need surgery, which is huge for his recovery. Obviously shortens the recovery. There's a chance he's back for week 1. More likely week 2 or 3, probably based on the timeline that we were given. So depending on how much time he misses.
Yeah, I disagree. Sorry. I think he's going to play in week 1. I do. I just think he's one of those guys that we know he doesn't need practice. He doesn't need practice time. Who gives a shit if he's practicing or not? I think he's one of very few players in the NFL, one of 30, 40 of them, whatever, in the whole league that can just show up week 1 and play. Of course, he doesn't, he can't be injured still, right? He's got to be feeling healthy and ready to go. But I think he's going to play in this game. He just strikes me. He's always played through injuries. We know that, right? Like, he plays through nagging things all the time. If this thing is 90, 95%, he's playing. My biggest concern, I guess, and maybe it's a minimal one, but it's, his age, it lingering throughout the season, being a lower body thing. He's had a history, obviously, with injuries, but I think he's going to play in week 1. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he does, but just in case he doesn't, that's where Calvin Ridley becomes more important, I would say, just because obviously without another premier receiver in the offense, Calvin Ridley is going to see more defensive attention and going to have be asked to carry a larger burden in terms of functioning passing game. So anyway, all that to be said, yes, we're super excited to see Will Levis in the passing game. It extends beyond just the Levis-Ridley connection too. It's like, how does Tyler Boyd, how is he fitting in with this offense? Who's the next receiver up in the rotation? Is it NWI? Is it Treylon Burks? Is it a slot guy? Be very interested to see how all that stuff shakes out. And then as we continue further down the depth chart, guys who probably won't even play with Will Levis, but there's a lot of competition at the back end of this wide receiver room. Guys like Jaquan Jackson, Mason Kinsey, Kyle Phillips, all competing for probably one spot in this, as a slot receiver, maybe two if one of the guys is like a designated punt returner. But I think the guy who's the designated punt returner is just the backup slot. It's not like Kyle Phillips isn't the backup returner and Mason Kinsey makes a team and Jaquan Jackson. Like one of those guys is probably making the team. So this is their chance to get on the field with reps that are a little more meaningful than training camp. Not a lot more meaningful, but a little more meaningful than training camp, and establish themselves as a leading candidate for that role. What are you expecting to see from that group?
Well, what's the pecking order? I think that's the only question I have, right? What order do they play? And I doubt they're going to really play together very much at receiver. Whichever one, I think, Mason Rudolph's going to be the number 2 quarterback, most likely, in my opinion. Brian Callahan did say he eventually wants to give Malik Willis reps with the 2 as this progresses forward, but I don't think it's going to start here in the first preseason game. I think it'll be Rudolph. So is that Kyle Phillips? That's Rudolph's slot receiver. Is it one of the other guys that you said? So that's really the only question I have is what's the pecking order? Because that'll help give us some clarity on how that competition's going.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's going to be interesting to see, but part of it is going to be like Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis, who's playing with who, because as good as Malik Willis has been reportedly throughout training camp, he's apparently taken a huge leap forward in this offense. Can I just say, by the way, like all the reports about the quarterbacks, all the quarterbacks are playing well in this offense. And we've seen Brian Callahan's history, with Jake Browning coming off, he was not even a highly ranked draft prospect or anything, steps in when Joe Burrow goes down and plays really well. Like, it's just a Brian Callahan offense thing that the offense is easier on the quarterback under Callahan's tutelage, and we're seeing that play out with Rudolph and Malik Willis.
A lot of people thought Jake Browning wasn't even an NFL quarterback, right? Like, and he's gone from that to like, he's actually like a high-level backup quarterback. Like and that's a huge compliment, as you know how I mean that, right? Like he's a high-level backup quarterback, or at least he was in that Callahan, Zach Taylor offense. I think the thing about Malik Willis that's most interesting is a ton of credit to Callahan and the offense for sure, but those are probably not the things that made him more decisive. You know what I mean? Like, I do think a bit of an internal light bulb has gone on for him in year 3 here, because you can be playing the best offense in the world. I mean, give you an example. Marcus Mariota in the Arthur Smith offense. Was it Arthur Smith's fault that Marcus Mariota was trigger shy and not letting the thing go? You know what? I think you know what I mean, right? No, it wasn't Arthur Smith's fault. So on the flip side, I think Willis deserves some singular credit for being more, trigger happy, so to speak, at the training camp practices, certainly at the scrimmage at Nissan Stadium a couple weeks ago. But with that said, Rudolph will be the 2, Willis will be the 3 in this game. And it'll be interesting to see which receivers work with who.
Yeah, and I think both quarterbacks right now would fall in the stock up category. Yeah. Like you said, Brian Callahan said Malik Willis should earn some reps with the 2s. I think he's earned that chance. I still don't think he's going to actually threaten Mason Rudolph, because just the body of work that Rudolph has put out in actual NFL games, not in his third training camp in the league, actual NFL games, getting the Steelers into the playoffs. Like he played really well down the stretch for them last year. I think he is pretty much locked into the backup job. But that doesn't mean that, if Malik Willis plays well in preseason, he could have some trade value. The Titans could keep him as a 3rd quarterback. We got the emergency quarterback rule now. Yep. So it's interesting to see how that'll play out. But I am just excited in general to watch, like, instead of it having a completely incompetent backup like the Titans have had the last few years, preseason has been a chore to watch because the offense just doesn't function with bad quarterback play. Having Mason Rudolph play 2 or 3 quarters and Malik Willis cleaning up, like, that's going to be a lot more exciting just to get through a slog of a preseason game.
It certainly is. And one of the questions I'm going to shift the topics to here is who will be protecting Will Levis, right? If the starting offense is playing, that means it's a starting offensive line. You were gone so long in Switzerland that Saadi Charles retired. Okay, probably a topic we could have started with. People were asking if we were going to do an emergency pod. It just didn't work out that day. I don't know if it warranted an emergency pod. I mean, maybe if we were available, we would have done it based on the people asking. But Saadi Charles retired And I can joke about it now because Brian Callahan flat out came and said no major event in his life, just decided football's not for him anymore. At 25 years old, having only made a couple $1,000,000, I say a couple because we know how these NFL guys live and spend, and maybe he's not that way. Maybe he's invested. Maybe he's set up for life. But let's be clear. He walked away, I'm going to guess, from between $5 to $15 million for the rest of his career. I think the low part of it is Sadiq Charles is an NFL offensive lineman. He's signing 1-year deals every year, making what he was going to make this year in Tennessee, 1.2, 1.3 million, whatever it was, for at least another 5 years, probably. Or he does a good job this year, Titans sign him to a multi-year contract, pay him $3 million a year, $4 million. He walked away from a lot of money. Kudos to him for, I hope, for sticking true to what he felt in his heart. It's not for him anymore at 25. It is mind-blowing, but who am I to judge? But this has thrown this into a frenzy at right guard. We'd be silly not to cover it, and we got to cover it for the preseason. He was going to win this job. By all accounts, he was going to be the starting right guard. It's not a Titans offseason unless something stupid happens. This has thrown this competition into a frenzy. It makes Dylan Radins the favorite. He's probably going to get first-team reps Saturday against the 49ers in the preseason. I got to say, though, it's pretty interesting that they've immediately put Andrew Rupcich into this competition. Rupcich, when the unofficial depth chart was released, reminder, Charles hadn't retired yet, listed as the starter. Rupcich wasn't even listed at right guard. He was listed as backup left guard, right? And, I mean, throughout camp, it seemed like this was a Charles and Radins thing, right? Well, now it's a Radins, Rupcich, and I guess Daniel Brunskill thing.
Yep.
Because Brian Callahan also said, we're fortunate Brunskill's got a lot of experience there. We'll throw him into that mix as well. 3-man race. Look, I'm not ready, okay? I am not ready to say Rupcich is going to win this job. I think everyone's expecting it to be Dylan Radins. I think there's a much better chance that Rupcich wins this job than most people think right now. How do you feel about it?
I kind of agree. I mean, in my stock up, stock down notes for this episode, what I wrote under stock up was Dylan Radins and Andrew Rupcich. What I wrote for stock down, was the right guard position. The right guard position took a hit here because, like you said, Sadiq Charles was gonna win the job. Yeah, I mean, at this point, if Radins was capable of just taking it and running with it, would Rupcich be so in the mix, publicly in the mix for the job too? Like, obviously they don't have that much confidence in Radins, or they just say, well, we don't have Charles anymore, Radins wins. Or it could also just be a situation where they always want competition at every position. So they're like, who's the competition going to be at this spot? It is interesting that it's not Daniel Brunskill. So I also had Daniel Brunskill in my stock down. Like, this guy was a starter last year, and now he's like barely, not even really in the mix for a starting job at all. He's like maybe going to back up center, maybe going to back up right guard, maybe going to back up both of those spots.
And they signed Corey Levin a few weeks ago. They brought him back, who's I think certainly in that mix for a backup interior role, probably even split with Brunskill, to be honest with you, in my opinion. So, I mean, this news helps Brunskill's 53-man roster chances, but I still don't think it's a surefire thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's just going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, but I wonder who's going to start. Like, I imagine on Saturday when the game kicks off, it's going to be Dylan Radins in there first.
I think so too.
What's going to be really interesting is if the starters play 2 series, does Andrew Rupcich come in for the second series and play right guard with the starters and see how the reps function that way?
I wouldn't rule that out, right? And the interesting thing to me, I don't want to get too much into this conversation because it could be a whole episode, but I don't know that the general fan base is realizing. Number one, I'll give you some examples and you'll know, and this you'll be able to, you'll know. The Titans like beef in the middle. This regime likes beef, okay? They drafted 700 pounds worth of it in the first 2 picks of the draft with Latham and T'Vondre Sweat, right? Like more than 700 pounds, actually, right? So they like beef, the middle of their defense, okay? Outside zone, we talked about that a lot. Bill Callahan's been running a lot of gap lately, a gap scheme, gap downhill power, whatever you want to call it, more so than zone, okay? When Dylan Radins was drafted, remember, he was drafted to be a zone-based guy. I don't think he's a great fit for gap. And I think they know that. And I think that's why they're putting another player into this mix. Brunskill's not a great fit for Gap. He came into the league underweight, right? Like he's not a big, meaty, guy. Powerful guy. Now, I don't want to put too much stock into this because the weights listed on the website are wildly inaccurate. But just to give you an example, they've got Dylan Radins at 301. We know he's heavier than that because he said he was earlier. I think he said he was around 312, 315. But they've got Rupsich listed at 318. They've got Rupsich listed 17 pounds heavier than Radins. If Radins, I'm not saying it's all equal, but if Radins is put on 10, 15 pounds, what's not to say Rupsich is probably not 325, 330 by this point, right? Like, I just don't know that they love the fit in their offense with Radins at right guard. Remember, like, when they talked about drafting Tavondre Sweat, Brian Callahan said, I hate dealing with pressure up the middle, right? I can scheme as an offensive guy for edge pressure, move up into the pocket. You can't deal with pressure up the middle. It's the same philosophy on the other side of the line, right? I want a guy that could prevent pressure from coming up the middle, right? So it's like, I think this is a real battle here. I really do. And it wouldn't shock me if they think Rupsich is a better fit for the scheme. Again, it sounds like I'm all the way there. I'm not there yet, I think, to say that he's going to win the job. But I can just foresee a bit of a shock coming here, and maybe it's not Radins. I'm not convinced.
Here's what I'll say to wrap up that topic is why the preseason matters so much right now. He's like, these are guys that it matters for. It matters for Andrew Rupsich because if he has a big preseason week 1 and gets a chance to come out with the starters in week 2 and doesn't mess it up, then we could see the road starting to be paved for him to win this job outright.
I'm piloting the plane if that's what happens. I got a front row seat. I paid for first class if it's Andrew Rupsich starting week 2 of the preseason. This game is so important for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be great. So very on board, very much looking forward to seeing that. Last thing, I mean, there's not much more. We've talked about the offense for 27 minutes, so we're getting pretty heavy here. NPF back from his injury, immediately started taking reps with the first team at right tackle. I think it's his job to lose at this point. I don't know if that's good or bad for the offense. It's not like there's a ton of options, to rotate in behind him. There's the Jalen Duncans and who's the guy they traded for? Leroy
Watson, but he's week to week with an injury. So John and Joe.
Wait. There's the Jalen Duncans, the Leroy Watsons, the John Ajukwus, like in the mix. But Leroy Watson, is he even practicing? Like, what's up with him?
He's out of a couple of weeks with an injury. Brian Callahan confirmed he's not going to play in this game. So it's got to be a Joku, I think, coming in as the second string tackle here behind NPF. Even then, I'm not convinced NPF's had enough padded practices to play in this game. I mean, it sounds like he's going to play until Callahan tells us he's not. Then we're operating under the assumption that he's playing, but it's going to be him. And then I guess the second-year UDFA from Boise State.
Yeah, and you hope he doesn't get Will Levis killed on his first snap because he's still rusty, but we'll see how that plays out. And then the running back workload, again, not that it really matters, but who comes in first is going to just be, we're finally going to get all the answers to the true pecking order. Yes, the Titans released an unofficial depth chart. I don't put any stock into the unofficial depth chart. I know people want to break it down and talk about where everyone is, but most of the rookies are at the back of the line, except for JC Latham, Tavondre Sweat, guys that are obviously not going to be at the back of the line. Yeah. And then you have whatever. I mean, the unofficial depth chart just doesn't mean hardly anything to me. And even then it has a slash between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So there's not even an indication there who's going to get the first crack at it. So we'll see how that plays out. And if they're one series it's Pollard and then Spears comes in, or if it's 2 plays it's Pollard and then Spears comes, we're going to get a lot of answers on that front. So anyway, I'm much more excited to see the offense than the defense, just because it's where all the hype is and where the quarterback is and all the most important, most watchable pieces are. But we should talk about the defense too, Justin. I think there's some injuries on this side of the ball that are going to affect things, so that's another reason why it's not quite as exciting, but probably not going to see L'Jarius Sneed. He's been in and out of practice, not dealing with any injury, but just management on that knee that we know could be a source of issues at some point if it's not managed properly. Chidobe Awuzie, strained calf, going to miss another couple of weeks here, so he's obviously not going to play. We know Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons aren't going to play, so that's 4 starters already, and that doesn't even come in. Is Quandre Diggs ready to play? He's been in training camp less than a week. Is Jamal Adams going to play? He's been dealing with soreness and rest, and he's not been really out there. So, we could see less than half the defensive starters on the field in this game. So, therefore, it's less exciting to watch. But There are guys stock up that I'm excited to see. One of them is the rookie cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who I think he had like a blister on his toe and missed a little bit of time in training camp, but he's okay. It's not a long-term issue or anything. I do wonder if he'll play because like if they're just being super safe. But I hope he plays because I want to see him because apparently he's been dominating one-on-ones at training camp. He's filling in for Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, guys that are missing a lot of time, is giving him a lot of chances to play. Melo's patting himself on the back if you're just listening to this on audio because he did call out the Titans' interest in Brownlee back March, way before the draft, maybe early April, way before the draft. And so yeah, it's going to be fun to see him now play because he's been good in camp, and I want to see him playing with the quote unquote starters, again less than half of them, but playing with the starters could be interesting.
And to be clear, I'm not just patting myself on the back because I reported the interest. Yes, that was very cool, but I'm patting myself on the back because I loved the player pre-draft, right? Like I was such a big fan of this pick and this player. I told everyone about, I think as soon as they drafted him, I mentioned the L'Jarius Sneed like similarities. And then Sneed gets up at the podium the other day and says, oh yeah, he reminds me a ton of myself with the way he wants to press guys at the line and the aggression. Massive fan of that pick. I am glad you started with him. I'm also excited, stock up guy, but I'm surprised you started with him because I'm going with two other defensive rookies. I'm going with T'Vondre Sweat, obviously, and I'm also going with Jalen Harrell, the 7th round pick out of Michigan. Sweat, I don't know we got to spend a ton of time on. If you're listening to this and you haven't been paying attention to camp, although you probably have, he's been quite dominant, both in team periods, both in one-on-ones. He gave Daniel Brunskill the business the other day. If you didn't see that rep, go back, watch it. Remember what I said about how they like beef in the middle and Brunskill's not that kind of guy? Well, that's your problem, right? But I can't wait for him to play. Attention's going to be on him with no Jeffrey Simmons on this line, no Harold Landry. Going to see a lot of T'Vondre Sweat early, and he's probably their best player that's going to play in this game on the defensive line. I'm also really excited to see Harold. This timing of this episode is good for him because Brian Callahan on Thursday said he's super excited to see him play, that he's had a bunch of really good practices, and said, yes, absolutely, I do think he can be a 3-down defender. Although there was some confusion with that question because he initially thought Paul Kuharsky was asking about Harold Landry, but when Kuharsky wisely interrupted him and said, no, Harold, the Michigan, he pretty much said the same stuff. He goes, I do think he can be a 3-down guy. He's rushing the passer well. He's been really competitive against the run. With the Arden Key suspension, another topic you and I didn't really cover. We
have not covered that. So before you just go into it, let's give some background. They apparently, Paul Kuharsky reported about 2 weeks ago now, maybe.
That's only been
a little less.
Today, I think it's the 9th or 10th day.
Okay, so a week and a half ago, that Arden Key was about to be suspended for 6 games due to performance-enhancing substances, testing positive or whatever. Nothing's happened since then. We have no official word from the league. We have no official word from the team. The coaches were asked about it in press conferences, and they didn't say it's not happening.
They said, acknowledged it, essentially.
They acknowledged it, and they were asked, do you have enough depth on the team already? And they basically said, yeah, we're happy with the guys we have to get through this 6-week period. It definitely makes you wonder, the timeline here, if he's appealing the suspension. Is he going to get it down to 4 games, to 2 games? Is it going to go away? Or is the NFL just working through some logistical, who knows what, red tape? I don't know why it's taking so long to get this announcement out. But yes, Arden Key, as of now, we are expecting will miss 6 games. So Jalen Harrell becomes super important. I mean, whoever wins the 3rd edge job, which will be the 2nd edge job with Arden Key out,
for almost half
becomes super important. Whether that's Rashad, a third of the season, if you count 18 weeks, but there's only 17 games. Rashad Weaver's in the mix. Jalen Harrell, obviously in the mix, and has apparently had a really good camp. So I'm definitely interested to see where the pecking order, again, with Harold Landry out also, who's going to start at edge in this game? Is it Jalen Harrell and Rashad Weaver? That's my expectation.
Maybe it's Arden Key and one of them, right? If he's not suspended yet, he can play, right?
That's
so
fair.
It's I can see them saying, hey, he's going to need the reps because he's going to be out for a while. So I bet you if he's not suspended before Saturday, Arden Key starts in this game with Rashad Weaver. And then you see for a series or two, and then you'll see a ton of Jalen Harrell, and you'll see a lot of Thomas Rush and Caleb Murphy who are trying to make the back end of this roster. And again, once Key suspended, whichever one of them makes the roster, I don't think it'll be both of them, gets bumped up a spot, right, on the depth chart. And heck, I didn't even mention Shane Ray, who's had a pretty damn good camp by all accounts.
Shane Ray could be number 3 there. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, they're going to be counting on Shane Ray, it looks like, which is concerning honestly, but everyone's excited about the heartwarming comeback story he's currently writing. It's a bit concerning because I don't know.
2018?
I'm sorry?
Hasn't played football since what, 2018?
Well, he was in the CFL in 2021, and he was up here. I probably bumped into him on the street. He was up here in Toronto 2022 playing for the Toronto Argonauts. But yeah, he last recorded an NFL sack in 2018, I think it was. So do you believe in miracles, in all honesty? Because it's not every day you see a guy like that come back 5 years later, 6 years later, and actually be a productive NFL player. So but they're counting on him, it seems. And I think it's not for sure that he's going to make the roster, but I think he's probably going to. And I am excited to see him in this game because they've really been tooting his horn at camp.
Yeah, totally. So we'll see how that all plays out. I'm very excited to see that rotation and see if Jalen Harrell's hype that he's generated in training camp, definitely a stock up guy, can translate to the preseason.
Javondre Sweat, Jarvis Brownlee, all the guys we just mentioned in this segment, big time stock up guys. I don't know how much more you want to cover, but
I have one guy I want to hit on.
Okay.
Matthew Jackson has 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions in training camp so far. I mean, that's a big number for a guy he's not like in man coverage, like turning around, picking up balls, or I guess man coverage isn't really great for getting interceptions, but it's not like he's a cornerback sitting in zone cover. Like he's a safety. He's playing deep and he's all around the ball seemingly all the time. So I don't know what his role is now that the Titans have Amani Hooker, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Elijah Molden. They have a lot of bodies in this room now after adding these 2 veterans over the last couple of weeks. But Matthew Jackson, I mean, he's got to be 5th right now based on his training camp performance.
I think the answer to that question, though, and in fairness, is he's not guaranteed to make this team, right? Like there's
but based on how he's,
like there's a possibility they only keep 4 safeties, right? I think they'll keep a 5th, but all I'm saying is you can't just assume that they're keeping 5. You can't even assume he's the 5th because they also really like Mike Brown, by the way, and he's made some plays at camp. And sources, by the way, I'm not just saying that. A source told me the other day they really like Mike Brown. So I do think there's a battle going on for that 5th spot if they keep a 5th again, which I think they will. But it's not a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Matthew Jackson or Mike Brown. In fact, I bet you they start this game at safety. I hope they do, because I don't think we're going to, I guess Hooker might play, but I don't think we're going to see Diggs. We're not going to see Adams. I guess we could see a little, I might be way off the mark. Maybe it's Hooker and Molden that start, but I think we're going to see a lot of Matthew Jackson and Mike Brown in this game. And you're going to see a lot of young secondary guys. That was a theme I wanted to bring up because of all the older vets we expect to be out. And Jackson, big opportunity for him to say, hey, you signed a bunch of safeties this year, but I made the 53 last year, and I want to make it again this year. So really excited to see Matthew Jackson in this game.
Yeah, me too. So that was the last guy I had on my list. Is there anyone else you had on your list?
No, to be honest, I don't. I mean, I'll run through some rapid fire. This episode's been, I think, long enough for our listeners. Even if you've missed us, you'd probably agree it's been long enough. RB3. I think Hassan Haskins is running away with it, but you'll see a lot of those guys. Even if Spears and Pollard play, which we expect they are, they shouldn't play a lot. So a lot of Hassan Haskins, a lot of Julius Chestnut in this game. What's going on at linebacker, right? Cedric Gray's got a shoulder. Is he going to play? I hope he does. Stock down, you want to talk about? We have not heard the hype from Cedric Gray that we expected to throughout camp. It's a stark, fierce reminder. These guys are still rookies, and it takes a lot of time sometimes. So it's no knock on him. Maybe we got ahead of ourselves, but bit of a stock down guy. Hope he plays. Can Kenneth Murray carry over the momentum that he's built at camp into this game? What else is happening? JoJo Doman had an interception the other day, but he's not going to play because he hurt himself at that practice. So what's going on at off-ball linebacker? That's something I'm watching. RB3, I'm watching. There are a lot of little things. Tight end, Chig versus Wiley. What's going on behind them? We know Nick Vannett's not playing because he's one of the best players on this 53, and he's earned that, right? So how much do the other guys play? David Martin Robinson, Thomas Udakoya. What does that tight end 3 battle look like? Lots of things I'm watching for in this game. A couple of the others that I'm watching for in this game.
No, those were good. Those were good shouts. And then I think that pretty much covers it for this episode. But I will just say, going forward, we're going to do a recap of this game, basically like a what we learned, maybe hit on every player that makes that has impact in this game. Anyone that stands out, we're going to talk through. And then some guys that don't stand out, we'll talk about what that means for them. That'll be coming to you, your feeds. We're hoping Saturday night, not confirmed 100%, but we're hoping Saturday night. So look out for that. As soon as the game is over, we're going to try to hop on and record. Going to be interesting, Justin. Football is back for real. It's here. I'm so excited.
I can't
wait to see Will Levis.
I've already got plans for that night. When I say plans, I've got a beautiful new 65-inch TV to watch the action on. I'm super excited about. I'm going to get some food. I've got snacks. I've got a beer or two that I'm getting into. I can't wait. I'm so excited for Saturday night.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, that'll do it for this one. Let's thank Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville for sponsoring this episode. Sinkers Beverages is the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check the link in this podcast description, you can join Sinkers In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. And while I've got you here, let me remind everyone, if you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching. Make sure you are subscribed to the Music City Audible YouTube channel. Give this video a like, a thumbs up, and turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. And again, please help the channel continue to grow. Keep being an awesome community. We really appreciate all your support by commenting. Comment anything below. Comment below on this video. Comment how excited you are to watch the preseason, what players you're excited to watch. Again, what you thought about my Italian and Justin's story and all the things. Anything you want to comment, just comment boosting the algo. Comment tighten up. Comment anything. We appreciate you guys. That'll do it. So until Saturday night, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.